Wicked for Good is out in theaters, the second part of the 2024 hit musical, Hollywood adaptation of a very successful Broadway musical, which in turn is based on a book, which in turn is a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. It's not a sequel per se, the movie. It's more of a Kill Bill situation because the first film adapted the first act of the play. This is the second act, so they're very much halves of one big whole. Directed once again by John M. Chu, starring Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, Jeff Goldblum, Michelle Yeoh, and Jonathan Bailey. Story picks up, if I understood correctly, a year after the events of the last film. Elphaba is on the run, trying very unsuccessfully to start a rebellion against the increasingly fascist regime of the Wizard of Oz. Eventually, she realizes she has to go back to the Emerald City and confront him, which of course reunites her with Glinda, who has accepted her role as the propped-up puppet for the regime. So, this is probably the biggest disappointment of the year for me, and in contention for the worst movie I've seen in 2025 overall. And I'm not biased against it because I actually quite liked the first part, despite definitely not being its target audience. I found it enjoyable and entertaining, with great production design, singing, chemistry between the two leads, and an interesting story. Well, the second part is a steep drop-off in quality and left me thoroughly bored and often totally confused. I will start with the pacing of the film, which is criminal. The first half, almost nothing happens that would propel the plot forward. Characters do things and meet each other for arbitrary reasons with no real consequences or weight. Even when Elphaba goes to the Emerald City, she ends up singing and dancing with the wizard, making a deal, and then immediately canceling that deal. And then, despite the fact that during this entire sequence, multiple times she has the opportunity to kill him, and he and his people have the opportunity to kill her, they somehow just go back to status quo right from the beginning. And then the second half suddenly begins to move at breakneck speed, rushing through important plot points with zero time for reflection. The biggest head scratcher being probably the scene where Dorothy's house crushes Nessa, and nobody at all seems to care about it. And I'll talk more about that later. Then there's the characters' actions and motivations, which none of them really make any sense. The first film had this fascinating subplot about the slide into fascism in Oz and the talking animals becoming a target of discrimination. And the second half barely addresses that at all. In fact, I had to go online and read comments from people who read the book to find out what that was even all about. Turns out there's a drought in Oz, and everyone's looking to the wizard to fix it, but of course he can't fix it because he's a charlatan. So instead he finds a group to blame, the animals, and begins rounding them up. Now, that is fucking great to include in a story like this, but it's not expanded upon in the movie at all. It's kind of like just a background element, like a tiny little push for Elphaba to do what she tries to do, I guess, but it's not really properly explained. And also, Elphaba goes to make a deal and she says, okay, I'll work with you if you free the animals. Wizard says, sure, if I have you, because remember, Elphaba, after the first film, can do real magic, so she could do something about the drought problem. So the wizard says, if I have you, I can let them go. And then immediately after that conversation, she finds a secret room with the animal cages and they have a falling out. And I'm like, is it that he simply didn't have time to release them? Or was he intending to keep them for another reason? And if so, what is that reason? Why is any of this happening? Also, why does Elphaba wait a full year before, doing seemingly nothing before going to confront the wizard? Natural answer would be, well, we're shown that the flying monkeys are guarding him, but then she does go and the monkeys are not a problem. Also, why does Nessa become a totalitarian governor in what seems like 3 minutes? Also, why is Madame Morrible working with the wizard? What's her deal? Is she just evil for evil's sake? Also, why is the reveal about the wizard being Elphaba's father being treated as a massive plot reveal, plot twist, when it was already incredibly obvious in the first film? Also, why does Elphaba decide to become evil after attempting to save Fiyero? And if she does, why doesn't she actually do anything evil at all for the remainder of the movie? There's so much nonsense that my head hurt. There's also three sequences which I have to talk about individually because they are so badly staged. The first one is the romantic song between Elphaba and Fiyero, where they come to her forest hut and begin singing basically about having sex, almost explicitly so. But despite entering the room together, they don't begin kissing or anything. Each of them goes to the opposite sides of the room and they keep singing separately while they awkwardly undress, kinda, because Elphaba takes off her coat and then just puts on some dirty sweater with holes in it. And I'm like, what is this? I don't think I've ever seen a sex scene before where people are dressing up instead of down. And why are these two lovers not in a frame together for most of the time? This makes it seem like they're contractually obliged to sleep together, but none of them really has their heart in it. The second scene comes soon after, and it's when Elphaba, she's lying in bed and she has a vision of Dorothy's house being carried by the cyclone onto her sister's house. She's like, I had this vision, I have to go help Nessa. She leaves, and you're thinking, okay, that's a vision of the future, and she's going to at least try to save Nessa. Nope. She arrives in the village and the house is already there, laying on top of Nessa's dead body, and the shoes have been taken by Dorothy, and it's just so ridiculous that I was laughing all the way through what should have been an emotional scene of grief. Also isn't helped by the fact that neither Elphaba nor Glinda, who are present, seem to give two shits about Nessa's death, and they immediately just go into this comedic slap fight right there. Just completely baffling tone of it all. And then scene 3 is the big climax at the end when Elphaba and Glinda are belting out this massive song about their friendship and how they changed each other and how they're doomed to be what they are. And then you realize as this is all going on, Dorothy, this little child, is literally locked in a cellar right beneath their feet, listening to these two witches, one of whom essentially sent her after the other, or at least helped send her, send the wizard, help the wizard send her. And, Dorothy must have been going, excuse me, what the fuck have I gotten myself into? Who are these people? It is wild. Essentially, the more you think about anything in this film, the stupider it becomes. And then it kind of saddens me that the movie even refuses to play into the first part's strength. I mean, yes, the singing is still good, at least when Arrivo and Grande are doing it, because Yo and Goldblum are not great. But the songs themselves are much less catchy, and there's only really one memorable one throughout the entire film, No Good Deed. Another key element of the first one's success for me was the dynamic and chemistry between the two leads. And in this part, they shared the screen for like 3 scenes in total, and maybe 2 of them are entertaining. Also, Ariana Grande has much less material to work with, very one-dimensional writing this time around. The production design is still very pretty, I will give it that, full of popping colors, exuberant buildings and costume design, makeup, hairstyles. It definitely goes big and goes bold and succeeds on that front. But that is just one thing in a movie that is otherwise, I'm sorry, pretty dog shit. And let me say this again, I did like the first part, so I'm not hating it on principle. I'm hating it because it sucks. And it felt like a massive waste of my time. Big, big disappointment.